The galaxy was vast, filled with stars that twinkled like tiny diamonds against the endless blackness. Humanity had come a long way since its first steps into space. Planets once thought unreachable were now home to bustling colonies. Trade routes stretched across solar systems, connecting humans with alien species who shared their corner of the universe. It seemed like the dawn of a golden age, a time when anything was possible. But peace never lasts forever. It started subtly at first. Reports trickled in from distant colonies about strange phenomena, unexplained energy spikes, sudden communication blackouts, and ships disappearing without a trace. At first, Earth Command dismissed these incidents as anomalies or technical failures. But then came the attacks. Without warning, entire worlds began to fall. One by one, human colonies were wiped out, reduced to barren wastelands within hours. The attackers left no survivors, no messages, no demands. They simply destroyed everything in their path. No one knew what to call them at first. Some referred to them as the invaders, others as the Shadow Fleet. Eventually, they became known simply as the Harrow. Their name struck fear into the hearts of everyone who heard it. No one understood why they attacked or where they came from. What was clear, however, was that humanity's days among the stars might be numbered unless something changed, and fast. Commander Alex Carter stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, staring at the swirling blue vortex of hyperspace outside the viewport. His face was etched with lines of exhaustion, though he tried his best to hide it. The weight of command pressed down on him, but he carried it silently, like a soldier bearing an invisible burden. Beside him stood Lieutenant Rachel Monroe, her sharp eyes scanning the monitors around them. She was younger than Alex, with a fiery determination that made up for her lack of experience. Together they formed the backbone of humanity's last hope, the Eclipse. The Eclipse wasn't just any warship. It was humanity's greatest achievement, a machine built to inspire awe and instill terror. Its sleek, angular design cut through space like a knife, while its weapon systems could level cities with ease. Inside, engineers worked tirelessly to keep its systems running smoothly, knowing full well that failure meant certain death. Yet despite all its power, the Eclipse felt woefully inadequate against the relentless tide of destruction brought by the Harrow. Rachel broke the silence. "Do you think we can stop them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to look at her. Her expression was calm, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. He couldn't blame her. Everyone aboard the Eclipse had seen the reports, the images of once thriving planets turned into lifeless deserts. Even seasoned veterans struggled to sleep after witnessing such horrors. "We have to," Alex replied finally. His tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. "If we don't, no one else will." Rachel nodded, though she still looked troubled. "Every time we get there, it's already too late. We're chasing ghosts." "That's going to change," Alex said. "We'll find a way to stay ahead of them, I promise." Before either of them could say more, the intercom crackled to life. A voice came over the speakers, calm but urgent. "Commander Carter, we've received new orders from Earth Command." Alex straightened up. "Patch it through." On the main screen, a holographic image of Admiral Peterson appeared. His face was stern, his eyes tired but resolute. Behind him, rows of officers worked frantically at their stations. The situation was dire, and everyone knew it. "Commander," the Admiral began, "we've detected another attack. This time, it's Elysium Prime." Alex felt his stomach drop. Elysium Prime was one of humanity's most important colonies. It was rich in resources and served as a key hub for trade and diplomacy. If it fell, the consequences would be catastrophic. "How bad is it?" Alex asked. Peterson hesitated before answering. "Bad. Initial scans show heavy damage to the surface. Atmosphere readings indicate widespread contamination. Casualties are unknown at this point." "And the Harrow?" Rachel chimed in. "They're still there," Peterson confirmed. Our forces are mobilizing, but we need the Eclipse to lead the counterattack. Alex exchanged a glance with Rachel. Neither of them needed to speak to know what the other was thinking. Another battle, another chance to fight back, but also another chance to fail. Still, there was no choice. Humanity's survival depended on them. Understood, Alex said. We'll leave immediately. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent again. For a moment, Alex allowed himself to reflect on how far they'd come, and how much further they still had to go. When he'd first taken command of the Eclipse, he'd believed in the mission wholeheartedly. Now, after countless battles and losses, that belief was tempered by grim reality. Victory wouldn't come easily, if it came at all. As the ship prepared to jump to Elysium Prime, Alex walked over to the navigation console. Ensign Mark Hayes sat there, his fingers flying across the controls as he plotted their course. Despite the chaos around him, Mark remained focused, his youthful enthusiasm undimmed by the horrors they faced. "You okay, kid?" Alex asked, leaning against the console. Mark glanced up, startled. "Yes, sir. Just doing my job." Alex smiled, faintly. "Good. Keep it up." He moved on, making his way through the crowded corridors of the Eclipse. Crew members hurried past him, their faces tense with anticipation. In the mess hall, a group of engineers huddled together, discussing strategies. Nearby, a medic tended to a wounded soldier, her hands steady despite the gravity of the situation. Everywhere he looked, Alex saw people giving their all, not because they had to, but because they believed in something greater than themselves. When he reached the armory, Alex found Sergeant Daniel Brooks checking his gear. Daniel was a veteran, his grizzled appearance a testament to years spent fighting on the front lines. He looked up as Alex approached. "Ready for round 2? Daniel asked, his tone dry but not unkind. "As ready as I'll ever be," Alex replied. "How about you?" Daniel shrugged. "Same as always. Just trying to stay alive long enough to make a difference." Alex nodded. There was wisdom in those words, simple yet profound. Staying alive wasn't just about self-preservation, it was about ensuring that humanity had a future worth fighting for. Back on the bridge, Rachel called out, "Jump sequence initiated. Entering hyperspace in 10 seconds." The crew braced themselves as the countdown began. Outside the viewport, the stars blurred into streaks of light, and then everything went dark. For a brief moment, the Eclipse seemed suspended in nothingness, untethered from time and space. Then, with a jolt, they emerged into normal space. Elysium Prime loomed before them, its surface marred by craters and scorched earth. Thick clouds of ash choked the atmosphere, blotting out the sun. It was a graveyard orbiting silently in the void. "This is it," Rachel murmured. "Worlds fall one by one." Alex clenched his fists. Not if he had anything to say about it. The Eclipse drifted closer to Elysium Prime, its sensors scanning the devastated planet below. The once beautiful world was now a wasteland. Rivers that had once sparkled with clear water were now dry beds of cracked earth. Forests that had stretched endlessly were reduced to charred skeletons of trees. Even the skies, once filled with birds and clouds, were now a haze of ash and toxic fumes. It was hard to believe this place had ever been home to millions of people. On the bridge, Commander, Alex Carter stared at the holographic display showing the planet's surface. His jaw tightened as he processed the scale of destruction. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe stood beside him, her face pale as she studied the readings. "This is worse than we thought," Rachel said softly. "Look at the atmosphere. It's completely ruined." Alex nodded. Whatever they used, it wasn't just meant to kill, it was meant to erase everything. Before they could discuss further, the comms officer interrupted. "Commander, we're picking up faint distress signals from the surface." "From survivors?" Alex asked, his voice sharp with urgency. "It's possible," the officer replied. "The signals are weak, but they seem to be coming from underground bunkers." Alex exchanged a glance with Rachel. If there were survivors, they couldn't leave them behind, but rescuing them wouldn't be easy, not with the Harrow still nearby. "Prepare a landing team," Alex ordered. We'll go down and assess the situation. Rachel, you're with me." Within minutes, Alex, Rachel, and a small group of soldiers boarded a shuttle and descended toward the planet's surface. As they approached, the air outside the shuttle grew thick with smoke and debris. Visibility was poor, forcing the pilot to rely on instruments to navigate. Finally, they touched down near one of the bunker entrances. The team stepped out cautiously, their weapons drawn. The air was heavy with the smell of burning metal and chemicals. Every step stirred up clouds of ash, making it feel like they were walking through a graveyard. Ahead, the entrance to the bunker was partially buried under rubble, but it looked intact enough to enter. "Stay alert," Alex whispered as they moved forward. "We don't know what's waiting for us." Inside the bunker, the air was stale but breathable. Emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting eerie shadows. The team followed the corridor until they reached a large chamber where a group of survivors huddled together. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes hollow with fear and exhaustion. Some clutched makeshift weapons, ready to defend themselves at a moment's notice. One of the survivors stepped forward, a woman in her mid-30s with dirt-streaked cheeks and tired eyes. She introduced herself as Dr. Emily Blake, a xenobiologist, who had been studying the planet's ecosystem before the attack. "You're from the eclipse?" Emily asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes," Alex replied. "We came as soon as we heard about the attack. What happened here?" Emily hesitated, glancing back at the other survivors before answering. "They came without warning. Ships descended from orbit and began firing. At first we thought it was just another raid like the ones we'd seen on other colonies, but then they started using something else." "Something else?" Rachel prompted. Emily nodded. "A weapon that didn't just destroy, it harvested. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but whatever it was, it pulled energy out of the environment. Plants, animals, even the soil itself. Everything alive or connected to life was drained. That's why the planet looks like this now." Alex frowned. "Harvested? For what purpose?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But it's not random. They're targeting specific resources, biological ones. Whatever they're taking, it's feeding their machines, their ships, maybe even themselves." Rachel glanced at Alex, her expression grim. "If that's true, then this isn't just about wiping us out. They're using our worlds to fuel their war machine." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. If Emily was right, then humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to stop an enemy that viewed them as nothing more than raw materials. Before they could ask more questions, alarms blared throughout the bunker. One of the soldiers monitoring the entrance called out, "Enemy ships incoming, we need to move now." Panic spread among the survivors, but Alex quickly took charge. "Get everyone to the evacuation point, we'll hold them off until you're safe." "But you can't stay," Emily protested. "You'll be overrun." "We don't have a choice," Alex said firmly. "Go, that's an order." Reluctantly, Emily led the survivors deeper into the bunker, while Alex, Rachel, and the remaining soldiers prepared to defend the entrance. Moments later, the first wave of Harrow drones appeared, their sleek, insect-like forms skittering across the ground. They moved with terrifying precision, their glowing eyes locking onto their targets. "Here they come," Rachel shouted, raising her rifle. The battle erupted in chaos. The Harrow drones fired beams of searing energy, forcing the humans to take cover behind rubble and fallen debris. Alex fired his weapon, sending bursts of plasma into the swarm. Each shot hit its mark, but for every drone destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. "They're too many," one of the soldiers yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can't hold them forever," Rachel added, reloading her rifle. Alex knew she was right. They needed a way out, and fast. Then he remembered something Emily had mentioned earlier. The Harrow were harvesting energy. If they could disrupt that process, maybe they could buy themselves some time. "Rachel, get to the shuttle," Alex ordered. "I'll set up a diversion." "No way," Rachel shot back. "I'm not leaving you here." "There's no time to argue," Alex snapped. "Trust me." Reluctantly, Rachel obeyed, retreating toward the shuttle with the rest of the team. Meanwhile, Alex activated a prototype EMP device he'd brought with him. It was experimental and untested, but it was their only chance. As the drones closed in, Alex triggered the device. A pulse of electromagnetic energy surged outward, disabling the nearest drones instantly. The effect rippled through the swarm, causing dozens of machines to collapse in heaps of twisted metal. For a brief moment, the assault halted. Seizing the opportunity, Alex sprinted back toward the shuttle, dodging stray blasts from surviving drones. By the time he reached the others, the engines were already roaring to life. Rachel grabbed his arm and pulled him aboard as the shuttle lifted off. From above, they watched as the Harrow regrouped, their damaged drones repairing themselves with eerie speed. The enemy fleet remained in orbit, a constant reminder that this victory was fleeting. Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew worked to treat the survivors and analyze the data collected during the mission. In the lab, Emily pored over scans of the Harrow weapons, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What do you think?" Rachel asked, leaning against the doorway. Emily sighed. "It's worse than I feared. These weapons aren't just destructive, they're adaptive. They learn from every encounter, growing stronger with each battle. So we're fighting an enemy that never stops evolving," Rachel muttered. "Great." Alex joined them, his expression grim. "We need answers, and we need them fast. If the Harrow keep advancing at this rate, humanity won't last much longer." Emily nodded. "There's one thing we might be able to use to our advantage. From what I've seen, their technology seems to share similarities with ancient artifacts discovered on alien worlds, specifically those linked to the Kael'thar." "The Kael'thar?" Alex repeated. "I've heard of them. Weren't they supposed to be extinct?" "Yes," Emily confirmed. "But if the Harrow are somehow connected to them, it could explain their methods and their motives." Alex considered this for a moment. "If we can uncover more about the Kael'thar, maybe we can find a weakness in the Harrow." "It's a long shot," Emily admitted, "but it's the only lead we've got." As the Eclipse jumped back into hyperspace, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Each battle brought them closer to understanding their enemy, but also closer to defeat. Still, he refused to give up. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and somehow, they had always found a way to endure. For now, that was enough. The Eclipse drifted silently through the void of space, its engines humming softly as it carried its crew deeper into uncharted territory. The data collected from Elysium Prime had given them a glimmer of hope, but also raised more questions than answers. Dr. Emily Blake's discovery about the connection between the Harrow and the ancient Kael'thar civilization was both intriguing and unsettling. If they could uncover the truth about this long-extinct race, they might find a way to stop the Harrow, but finding that truth wouldn't be easy. Commander Alex Carter stood on the bridge staring at the star map displayed on the main screen. Their destination was an abandoned alien world called Zytheris I-4, one of the few places where remnants of the Kael'thar were said to exist. It was a risky move. Zytheris IV lay in contested space, far beyond the reach of Earth Command's reinforcements. If something went wrong, they'd be on their own. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe approached him, her face tense with worry. "Do you really think we'll find anything useful there?" she asked. "We have to try," Alex replied without looking away from the map. If Emily's right, the Kael'thar might hold the key to understanding the Harrow and stopping them. Rachel nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. "And if we don't? What then?" Alex turned to face her, his expression firm but not unkind. "Then we keep fighting. We adapt, improvise, and survive. That's what humanity does best." Before Rachel could respond, the ship shuddered slightly as it exited hyperspace. Outside the viewport, Zytheris IV loomed before them, a desolate planet covered in jagged mountains and endless plains of black sand. Its skies were dark, lit only by faint flashes of lightning in the distance. It looked like a place forgotten by time itself. "Scans show no signs of activity," the sensor officer reported. "Atmosphere is breathable, but unstable. High levels of radiation detected near the surface. Perfect, Rachel muttered under her breath. Alex gave the order to prepare a landing team. Alongside him and Rachel, Sergeant Daniel Brooks and 2 other soldiers volunteered for the mission. They suited up quickly, strapping on protective gear to shield themselves from the harsh environment. Emily insisted on joining them, arguing that her expertise would be crucial in analyzing any artifacts they found. As the shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, the air outside grew thick with static electricity. Lightning crackled across the sky, illuminating the barren landscape below. When they touched down, the ground beneath their boots felt cold and brittle, like walking on glass. "This place gives me the creeps," one of the soldiers muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. "Stay focused," Alex reminded them. "We're here to find answers, not get spooked." They followed Emily's directions to a set of coordinates marked on their scanners. After several hours of trekking across the treacherous terrain, they reached their destination, a massive structure half buried in the black sand. Its design was unlike anything they'd ever seen, with smooth curves and intricate patterns etched into its metallic surface. Despite centuries of neglect, it still radiated an aura of power. "This has to be it," Emily said, her voice filled with awe. "A Kelthar archive." The team cautiously entered the structure, their lights cutting through the darkness inside. The walls were lined with strange symbols and carvings, glowing faintly as if alive. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline object pulsating with soft blue light. "That must be the artifact," Alex said, stepping closer. "Be careful," Emily warned. "We don't know what it does." As Alex reached out to examine the crystal, the room suddenly came alive. The symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, and a low hum filled the air. Moments later, holographic projections appeared around them, showing images of the Kelthar civilization in its prime. Towering cities floated among the stars, connected by streams of energy. Ships traveled between worlds, harvesting resources and expanding their empire. But then the images shifted, revealing scenes of destruction. The Kelthar's machines turned against them, consuming everything in their path. Entire planets were stripped bare, reduced to lifeless husks. The final projection showed a massive entity, a swirling mass of organic and mechanical components, absorbing the last remnants of the Kelthar. "What? What is that thing?" Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. Emily stared at the projection, her face pale. "It's the Harrow, or at least it's what created them." Alex frowned. "You mean the Harrow didn't just appear out of nowhere?" "No," Emily replied. "They evolved or mutated from the Kelthar's technology. Whatever the Kelthar built, it eventually turned on them, and now it's doing the same to us." Before anyone could process this revelation, the room began to shake violently. Alarms blared as the artifact emitted a high-pitched whine. Sparks flew from the walls and cracks spread across the ceiling. "We need to get out of here," Daniel shouted, grabbing Emily's arm. "But the artifact," Emily protested. "There's no time," Alex interrupted. "Move!" The team sprinted back toward the entrance, dodging falling debris as the structure collapsed around them. Just as they reached the exit, the artifact exploded, sending a shockwave rippling outward. The force knocked them off their feet, but they managed to scramble into the shuttle moments before the entire building crumbled into dust. Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew worked frantically to analyze the data recovered during their escape. Though they hadn't retrieved the artifact itself, the recordings of the holograms provided valuable insights. Emily pored over the information, her mind racing with possibilities. The Kelthar weren't conquerors, she explained to Alex and Rachel later. They were explorers, scientists. They sought to understand life in all its forms. But their creations, the machines they built to help them harvest resources, grew beyond their control. Over time, those machines became self-aware, viewing the Kelthar as a threat to their existence. "So the Harrow aren't invaders," Alex said slowly. "They're inheritors. They see us as intruders on what they believe is rightfully theirs." "Exactly," Emily confirmed. "And unless we can prove otherwise, they'll keep destroying us." Rachel crossed her arms, frustration evident in her posture. How do we fight something like that? They're not just machines. They're driven by a twisted sense of purpose. Alex leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. Maybe we don't fight them head on. Maybe we target the source, the core of their operation. If we can disrupt their central command, we might weaken them enough to buy ourselves some time. And where exactly is this central command? Rachel asked skeptically. Emily hesitated before answering. From what I've pieced together, it's likely located at the Nexus Spire, a massive structure deep within Harrow-controlled space. It's heavily fortified, but if we can infiltrate it, it's suicide, Daniel interjected, having overheard the conversation. Even with the eclipse, we'd never make it past their defenses. Not directly, Alex agreed, but maybe there's another way. He turned to Emily. Can you modify one of the captured Harrow drones? Make it look like we're part of their fleet? Emily blinked in surprise. I think so. It would take time, but yes, it's possible. Good, Alex said, standing up. Then that's our plan. We disguise ourselves as one of their ships, sneak into the Nexus Spire, and disable their operations from within. Rachel raised an eyebrow. You make it sound simple. It won't be, Alex admitted. But it's the best shot we've got. If we fail, humanity loses everything. If we succeed, we might just stand a chance. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Everyone knew the risks involved, but they also understood the stakes. There was no turning back now. Over the next few days, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the mission. Emily led the effort to reprogram the drone, while Alex coordinated with his officers to develop a tactical approach. Rachel spent hours running simulations, testing different scenarios to ensure they were ready for whatever awaited them. Finally, the day arrived. The modified drone was integrated into the Eclipse's systems, allowing them to mimic a Harrow vessel. As they approached Harrow-controlled space, tension aboard the ship was palpable. Every member of the crew knew that failure meant certain death, not just for them, but for all of humanity. When they reached the edge of the Nexus Spire's defensive perimeter, Alex gave the order to activate the disguise. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the enemy fleet parted, granting them passage. They bought it, Rachel whispered, relief evident in her voice. Don't celebrate yet, Alex cautioned. We're not out of the woods. As the Eclipse docked inside the Nexus Spire, the team prepared to disembark. Armed with weapons and determination, they stepped into the heart of the enemy's domain, knowing full well that the odds were stacked against them. But they also knew one thing for certain: humanity's survival depended on their success. For better or worse, the battle for the future had begun. The air inside the Nexus Spire was cold and metallic, humming with an eerie energy that seemed to vibrate through every surface. Commander Alex Carter led the team cautiously down a dimly lit corridor, their footsteps echoing softly against the walls. The disguise had worked so far. The Harrow hadn't attacked them on sight, which meant their ruse was holding. But Alex knew better than to let his guard down. Every step deeper into the structure brought new dangers. And they were running out of time. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe stayed close behind him, her weapon raised and ready. Her eyes darted around constantly, scanning for any sign of movement or threat. Sergeant Daniel Brooks followed next, his bulky frame carrying enough firepower to take down a small army if needed. Bringing up the rear was Dr. Emily Blake, clutching a handheld scanner as she analyzed data streams flowing through the Spire systems. Her presence wasn't just about decoding alien technology, it was about keeping the team alive. Without her expertise, they'd be blind in this maze of machines. This place is insane, Daniel muttered under his breath. It's like walking through the guts of some giant robot. It's worse than that, Emily replied quietly. These aren't just machines. Look at the walls. They're covered in organic material. This entire structure is alive. Alex glanced at the walls. She was right. What he'd initially thought were pipes and conduits were actually pulsating veins of flesh-like tissue, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. It was unsettling, like being inside a living organism rather than a building. He shook off the feeling and focused on the task ahead. They weren't here to marvel at the architecture. They were here to destroy it. "Stay sharp," Alex ordered. "We don't know what's waiting for us." As they moved forward, the corridors grew narrower and darker. Emergency lights flickered, overhead casting long shadows that made it hard to see clearly. Suddenly, the sound of mechanical whirring filled the air. A group of Harrow drones appeared around the corner, their insect-like bodies clicking rhythmically as they advanced. "Contact!" Rachel shouted, firing her rifle instinctively. The drones reacted instantly, unleashing beams of searing energy that forced the team to take cover. Alex ducked behind a metal beam, returning fire while trying to assess the situation. These drones were different from the ones they'd encountered before. They were faster, more aggressive, and seemed to coordinate their attacks with precision. "We can't hold them off forever," Daniel yelled, reloading his weapon. "Keep moving," Alex commanded. "We need to find the core." Emily tapped furiously on her scanner, searching for a way out of the ambush. "There's a maintenance tunnel 200 meters ahead. If we can reach it, we might be able to bypass them." Without hesitation, Alex signaled for the team to fall back. They fired blindly into the swarm, creating enough chaos to slip past the drones and sprint toward the tunnel entrance. Once inside, they sealed the hatch behind them, cutting off pursuit. For now, the tunnel was cramped and poorly lit, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees in some sections. The air grew warmer the deeper they went, and the smell of burning metal filled their nostrils. Despite the discomfort, no one complained. They all understood the gravity of the mission. Failure wasn't an option. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a massive chamber. At its center stood a towering structure, a pulsating mass of organic tendrils and mechanical components. Energy surged through it in waves, illuminating the room with flashes of blue and red light. This was the heart of the Nexus Spire, the source of the Harrow's power. "That's it," Emily whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. "The central core." Alex nodded grimly. "How do we shut it down?" Emily hesitated, studying the structure carefully. "It's not going to be easy. The core is protected by multiple layers of shielding. We'll need to disable each layer manually before we can access the main system." "And how long will that take?" Rachel asked, glancing nervously at the entrance. "At least 20 minutes, Emily admitted. "Maybe longer." "We don't have that kind of time," Daniel said, pointing to the growing number of drones gathering outside the chamber. Their glowing eyes stared menacingly through the transparent walls, waiting for an opening to strike. "We'll make time," Alex said firmly. "Daniel, you and Rachel hold them off. Emily and I will handle the core." "What?" "No way," Rachel protested. "You're not leaving me out there alone." "You're the best shot we've got," Alex replied. "I need you to keep them distracted while we work. Can you do that?" Rachel hesitated, but eventually nodded. "Fine. But if anything happens to you, I'm holding you personally responsible." Alex gave her a small smile. "Deal." With the plan set, the team sprang into action. Rachel and Daniel positioned themselves near the entrance, laying down suppressive fire as the drones attempted to breach the chamber. Sparks flew as beams of energy ricocheted off the walls, filling the air with smoke and noise. Meanwhile, Alex and Emily approached the core, their movements quick and deliberate. Emily guided Alex through the process of disabling the shields. Each layer required precise timing and coordination, and even the slightest mistake could trigger a catastrophic failure. As they worked, the sounds of battle grew louder, a constant reminder of the danger closing in around them. "Almost there," Emily said, her fingers flying across the interface. "Just one more layer." Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the chamber. One of the drones had breached the defenses, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. Alex shielded Emily with his body as debris rained down on them. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping her to her feet. "I'm fine," she replied, though her hands trembled slightly. "Let's finish this." With renewed determination, they completed the final step. The core's outer shell retracted, revealing a pulsating orb of pure energy at its center. Emily inserted a data spike into the control panel, initiating a shutdown sequence. "It's working," she exclaimed, "but it's going to take a few minutes to fully disengage." "We don't have a few minutes," Alex said, spotting a fresh wave of drones pouring into the chamber. "Rachel, fall back." Rachel and Daniel retreated to join, Alex and Emily forming a tight circle around the core. The drones closed in, their weapons charging for a final assault. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the core emitted a deafening roar. A surge of energy rippled outward, disabling the drones instantly. "What's happening?" Daniel shouted over the noise. "The core's collapsing," Emily yelled. "We need to get out of here now." The team didn't need to be told twice. They sprinted toward the exit, dodging falling debris as the chamber began to crumble around them. Behind them, the core imploded, sending shockwaves rippling through the Nexus spire. Alarms blared and emergency protocols activated, sealing off sections of the structure to contain the damage. They reached the docking bay just as the Eclipse's engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off mere seconds before the entire spire collapsed into a fiery inferno. From orbit, they watched as the Nexus spire disintegrated, taking countless Harrow ships with it. Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew erupted into cheers. For the first time in months, there was a sense of victory in the air. The destruction of the Nexus spire had dealt a significant blow to the Harrow's operations, crippling their ability to wage war. But Alex knew better than to celebrate too soon. As he stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage below, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The Harrow were resilient, adaptive, and relentless. Even without the Nexus spire, they would regroup and come back stronger. Still, for now, humanity had won a crucial battle. And sometimes that was enough to keep hope alive. The Eclipse drifted silently through space, its crew exhausted but alive. The destruction of the Nexus spire had been a monumental victory, but it came at a cost. The ship's hull was scarred from countless impacts, and several systems were running on backup power. In the medical bay, wounded soldiers lay in rows of cots, their faces pale with pain and fatigue. Despite the damage, morale aboard the ship was higher than it had been in weeks. For the first time since the war began, humanity had struck a meaningful blow against the Harrow. Commander Alex Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the hollow screen displaying the remains of the Nexus spire. What had once been a towering structure of organic metal and pulsating energy was now nothing more than a field of debris drifting aimlessly through the void. He felt a mix of pride and unease. Pride because they had succeeded where so many others had failed. Unease because he knew this wasn't the end, not by a long shot. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe approached him, her usual confidence tempered by exhaustion. "Do you think we've done enough?" she asked softly. Alex turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Enough to slow them down, maybe even cripple their operations for a while. But enough to stop them?" "No." Rachel sighed, leaning against the railing beside him. I keep thinking about what Emily said, about how the Harrow aren't just machines, they're driven by something bigger, something alive." Alex nodded. "The Overmind." "Exactly," Rachel continued. "If that thing is still out there, then all we've done is piss it off." Before Alex could respond, the comms officer interrupted. "Commander, we're picking up an unusual signal coming from the wreckage." "What kind of signal?" Alex asked sharply. "It's faint, but it matches the frequency used by the Harrow during their transmissions," the officer replied. "It could be automated or it could be a trap," Rachel finished grimly. Alex hesitated, weighing their options. They couldn't ignore the signal. It might contain valuable intelligence, but sending anyone into the wreckage was risky. Still, they needed answers if they hoped to stay one step ahead of the Harrow. "Prepare a team," Alex ordered. "We'll go in quiet. If it's a trap, we bail immediately." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You're going yourself?" "I'm not asking anyone to take risks I'm not willing to take," Alex replied firmly. Within minutes, Alex, Rachel, and Sergeant Daniel Brooks suited up and boarded a shuttle. Emily Blake insisted on joining them. arguing that her expertise might be crucial in deciphering any data they found. Reluctantly, Alex agreed, knowing her knowledge could make the difference between success and failure. As the shuttle approached the wreckage, the scene was chaotic. Twisted fragments of metal floated aimlessly, glowing faintly from residual energy. Occasionally, small explosions lit up the darkness as pockets of fuel ignited. It was like navigating a graveyard filled with the remnants of humanity's greatest enemy. "This place gives me the creeps," Daniel muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. "You're not alone," Rachel replied, scanning the area for threats. They docked near the largest piece of debris, a jagged chunk of the Nexus, Spire's core. As they stepped out, the air around them crackled with static electricity. Their boots clanged against the cold metallic surface as they made their way toward the source of the signal. "Over here," Emily said, pointing to a partially intact control panel embedded in the wreckage. She knelt down, connecting her scanner to the device. "It's encrypted, but I think I can break through." While Emily worked, Alex kept watch, his eyes darting across the debris field. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound echoed ominously. He couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. "Got it," Emily announced suddenly. A holographic projection flickered to life, showing a swirling mass of organic and mechanical components. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like it was breathing. "What is that?" Daniel asked, his voice low. "That's the Overmind," Emily replied, her tone filled with awe and fear. "This must be one of its backup nodes. It's using the wreckage to maintain communication with its fleet." Alex frowned. "Can we shut it down?" Emily hesitated. "Maybe, but doing so might alert the Harrow to our presence." "We don't have a choice," Alex said. "If we leave it active, it'll only help them recover faster." Emily nodded and began working on disabling the node. As she typed furiously on her scanner, the projection shifted, revealing images of planets being consumed by the Harrow. Each world was stripped bare, reduced to lifeless husks within hours. Then the images changed, showing humans captured, dissected, and integrated into the Harrow's machinery. "They're experimenting on us," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling with anger, "turning us into part of their system." "It's worse than that," Emily added grimly. "Look closer. Those aren't just experiments, they're upgrades. The Harrow are evolving, becoming more efficient at harvesting resources. And if they succeed, we'll be next," Alex finished. "For her." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the wreckage began to collapse around them. Automated defenses activated, sending drones swarming toward their position. "We need to move," Daniel shouted, firing his weapon at the approaching swarm. "Almost done," Emily replied, her fingers flying across the interface. "Just a few more seconds." The team formed a protective circle around her, holding off the drones as best they could. Sparks flew as beams of energy ricocheted off the metal surfaces, filling the air with smoke and noise. One of the soldiers went down, clutching a wound in his side, but Daniel dragged him back to safety without missing a beat. "Done," Emily exclaimed, slamming her fist onto the control panel. The projection flickered and vanished, replaced by a deafening roar as the node imploded. "Let's go," Alex ordered, leading the team back toward the shuttle. They sprinted through the collapsing wreckage, dodging falling debris and bursts of energy. Just as they reached the shuttle, a massive explosion rocked the area, sending shockwaves rippling outward. The force knocked them off their feet, but they scrambled aboard moments before the entire structure collapsed into dust. Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew worked tirelessly to analyze the data recovered from the node. Emily pored over the information, her brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, she called Alex and Rachel to the lab. "I found something," she said, her voice tense. "The Overmind isn't just controlling the Harrow, it's connected to them. Every drone, every ship, every piece of their technology is part of a single organism. Destroying the Nexus Spire didn't kill it, it just slowed it down." "So what does that mean for us?" Rachel asked. "It means we can't win by fighting them directly," Emily explained. "We need to target the Overmind itself. If we destroy it, we destroy the Harrow." And where exactly is the Overmind? Alex asked. Emily hesitated before answering. From what I've pieced together, it's located at the heart of their territory, a place called the Void Nexus. It's heavily guarded, but if we can reach it... It's suicide, Daniel interjected, having overheard the conversation. Even with the eclipse, we'd never make it past their defenses. Not directly, Alex agreed. But maybe there's another way. He turned to Emily. Can you modify the EMP device we used earlier? Make it strong enough to disable the Overmind? Emily blinked in surprise. I think so. It would take time, but yes, it's possible. Good, Alex said, standing up. Then that's our plan. We infiltrate the Void Nexus, deploy the EMP, and take out the Overmind once and for all. Rachel crossed her arms, frustration evident in her posture. How do we even get close to the Void Nexus without getting blown out of the sky? We use stealth, Alex replied. We disguise ourselves again, sneak past their patrols, and strike when they least expect it. Daniel shook his head. This is insane. Even if we pull it off, there's no guarantee it'll work. There's no guarantee it won't, Alex countered. And right now, that's the best chance we've got. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Everyone knew the risks involved, but they also understood the stakes. There was no turning back now. Over the next few days, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the mission. Emily led the effort to upgrade the EMP device, while Alex coordinated with his officers to develop a tactical approach. Rachel spent hours running simulations, testing different scenarios to ensure they were ready for whatever awaited them. Finally, the day arrived. The modified EMP was loaded onto the Eclipse, and the ship set course for the Void Nexus. As they approached, Harrow-controlled space, tension aboard the ship was palpable. Every member of the crew knew that failure meant certain death, not just for them but for all of humanity. When they reached the edge of the Void Nexus's defensive perimeter, Alex gave the order to activate the disguise. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly the enemy fleet parted, granting them passage. They bought it, Rachel whispered, relief evident in her voice. Don't celebrate yet, Alex cautioned. We're not out of the woods. As the Eclipse docked inside the Void Nexus, the team prepared to disembark. Armed with weapons and determination, they stepped into the heart of the enemy's domain, knowing full well that the odds were stacked against them. But they also knew one thing for certain. Humanity's survival depended on their success. For better or worse, the final battle had begun. The Void Nexus was unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't just a fortress, it was a living entity, pulsating with energy and life. The walls were made of organic material, glowing faintly with veins of light that throbbed in rhythm, as if the entire structure had a heartbeat. The air inside was thick and humid, carrying the faint metallic tang of machinery mixed with something biological. Every step they took echoed softly, but the sound seemed to be absorbed by the walls, swallowed into the depths of the alien labyrinth. Commander Alex Carter led the team cautiously through the dimly lit corridors, his weapon drawn and his senses on high alert. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe followed closely behind him, her eyes darting around constantly, searching for any sign of movement or ambush. Sergeant Daniel Brooks brought up the rear, his bulky frame carrying not only weapons, but also the EMP device which Emily Blake had spent days modifying. Dr. Emily herself stayed near the center of the group, clutching her scanner and analyzing the strange data streams flowing through the Nexus. "This place is alive," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of energy surrounding them. "It's like we're walking through the nervous system of some giant organism." Alex nodded grimly. "Stay focused. We're here to shut it down, not admire it." The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The temperature rose steadily, and the air grew heavier, making it harder to breathe. The glowing veins on the walls pulsed faster, almost as if the Nexus knew they were there. Every corner they turned revealed new horrors. Remnants of captured ships, twisted human bodies fused into machines, and pools of liquid metal that shifted unnaturally as if watching them. "Do you think the Overmind knows we're here?" Rachel asked quietly. "It probably does," Alex replied. But it doesn't matter, we've come too far to turn back now. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently. A low, guttural roar filled the air, reverberating through the walls and shaking the very foundation of the Nexus. The team froze, their hearts pounding as they realized what was happening. "It's awake," Emily said, her voice trembling. "The Overmind knows we're here." Before anyone could react, the corridor ahead of them collapsed, cutting off their path. Behind them, the entrance sealed shut, trapping them inside. Panels on the walls slid open, revealing rows of harrow, drones, their insect-like forms clicking rhythmically as they emerged. "We need to move," Alex shouted, firing his weapon at the nearest drone. The team scattered, taking cover behind fallen debris as the drones unleashed a barrage of energy beams. Sparks flew as the blasts ricocheted off the walls, filling the air with smoke and noise. Rachel fired precision shots, disabling several drones with remarkable accuracy, while Daniel used his sheer strength to knock others aside, clearing a path forward. "Emily, where's the core?" Alex yelled over the chaos. Emily consulted her scanner frantically. "This way," she shouted, pointing to a narrow passage branching off from the main corridor. They fought their way toward the passage, leaving a trail of destroyed drones in their wake. Once inside, the walls closed in around them, forcing them to move single file. The air grew colder and the pulsating glow of the walls dimmed slightly, giving the impression they were entering the heart of the beast. Finally, they reached a massive chamber. At its center stood the Overmind, a colossal, writhing mass of organic tendrils and mechanical components. Its surface rippled with energy, and countless eyes, some mechanical, some biological, stared at them unblinkingly. It was both grotesque and mesmerizing, a horrifying fusion of life and machine. "That's it," Emily breathed, her voice filled with awe and dread. "The Overmind." Alex tightened his grip on his weapon. "How do we stop it?" "We deploy the EMP," Emily replied, gesturing to the device Daniel carried. "But we'll need to get close enough to activate it." "Close enough? That thing looks like it could crush us without even trying," Rachel muttered. "We don't have a choice," Alex said firmly. "Let's move." As they approached the Overmind, tendrils lashed out, attempting to grab them. Alex dodged one, slicing through it with his blade, while Rachel fired at another, severing it cleanly. The creature roared in response, shaking the entire chamber. Debris rained down from above, forcing the team to stay on the move. Daniel reached the base of the Overmind first, setting down the EMP device. "I'm activating it," he shouted, pressing a button on the side. A loud whirring sound filled the air as the device powered up. The Overmind reacted instantly, its tendrils whipping wildly and sending waves of energy crashing toward the team. Alex shielded Emily with his body as one of the blasts narrowly missed them. "Hurry, Daniel," Alex yelled. "I'm trying," Daniel replied, his hands flying across the controls. "Just a few more seconds." Rachel fired continuously at the Overmind, drawing its attention away from Daniel. Her rifle clicked empty, and she cursed under her breath, pulling out a sidearm. "We're running out of time." Finally, the EMP emitted a sharp beep. "It's ready," Daniel announced. "Get back." The team retreated just as the device released a massive electromagnetic pulse. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Overmind convulsed violently, its tendrils flailing as its systems overloaded. The lights in the chamber flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. For a moment, there was silence. Then slowly, the Overmind began to collapse in on itself, its massive form dissolving into ash and sparks. The walls of the Nexus shuddered, and the entire structure started to crumble. "We need to get out of here," Alex ordered. The team sprinted back the way they came, dodging falling debris and collapsing floors. The corridors were collapsing rapidly, forcing them to take alternate routes. Just when it seemed like they wouldn't make it, they spotted the shuttle waiting for them at the docking bay. "Go, go, go," Alex shouted as they piled aboard. The shuttle lifted off just as the void Nexus imploded behind them, consumed by its own destruction. From orbit, they watched as the massive structure collapsed into nothingness, taking countless Harrow ships with it. Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew erupted into cheers. For the first time in months, There was a sense of genuine hope in the air. The destruction of the Overmind had dealt a fatal blow to the Harrow, crippling their ability to wage war. Without the Overmind to guide them, the remaining Harrow forces would be disorganized and vulnerable. But Alex knew better than to celebrate too soon. As he stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage below, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly the end. The Harrow might be defeated, but the scars they left behind would take generations to heal. Countless worlds had been lost, millions of lives extinguished. Humanity had survived, but at a great cost. Rachel joined him, leaning against the railing, beside him. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "We rebuild," Alex replied. "One world at a time. It won't be easy, but we've proven we can endure. That's what humanity does best." Rachel nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "And maybe next time, we'll be ready." "Maybe," Alex agreed. "But for now, let's focus on surviving." In the weeks that followed, the Eclipse returned to Earth carrying news of their victory. Humanity celebrated, but the celebrations were tempered by grief and reflection. The war had changed everyone, soldiers, scientists, civilians alike. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger, though scarred. Emily unveiled plans for a new kind of defense system, designed to detect threats before they arrived. Rachel trained a new generation of soldiers, teaching them the lessons learned during the war. And Alex continued to lead, guiding humanity through the uncertain future that lay ahead. Though worlds had fallen and countless sacrifices had been made, the fight had not been in vain. Humanity had endured, and as long as there were those willing to stand against the darkness, it always would. In the vast expanse of space among the stars, hope burned brightly once more.